Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Daily Thread. Today, we're discussing a few very interesting stories, including a train wreck in East Palestine, Ohio, that really isn't getting much coverage, and other stories coming your way. So, thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Daily Thread. Okay, first of all, Abba, I want to get to some info that I got from the Boca area. So, Ben Shapiro headlined an event last night in BRS, Boca Raton Synagogue, I believe, with Rabbi Ephraim Goldberg and others discussing anti-Semitism. And I know you were present. We'll show the picture of you and Mr. Shapiro and Rabbi Ephraim Goldberg on the screen.
Right.
I had heard that you were there before the doors even opened. You were like first online.
Well, first of all, parking is a problem there. So we had a plan to we went out to eat at 4:30 at a restaurant about 10 minutes away from the Boca Raton Synagogue. Okay, and then we went there for Mincha Maariv, which started at 6 o'clock. So of course I was there before the program started. So we did Mincha Maariv at 6 o'clock. There was a shiur from one of the assistant rabbis in between Mincha Maariv. We finished at about 6:40 Maariv here in Florida, and we went outside. Then people were already lined. People were already lined up.
Doors open at 7?
No, doors open at 6:45.
So I don't know. I heard from some eyewitnesses that you were first online.
Yeah. Well, now who'd you hear from? Who'd you hear that from?
I don't give up my sources like that.
Well, there were other people online in front of me. We were one of the first because that was our plan. Okay, I had spoken to Rabbi Goldberg a couple of days ago about meeting Ben Shapiro and Yair Rosenberg from the Atlantic, and he said that we'll ask them. And when I met him before the program started, after Maariv, he said that I should come into his office at about 7:15. Which is what I did. So, where is this mysterious window that has anything to do with me being there?
I was curious. I was curious how you got to get a picture with Ben. So did you have like interaction with him? Did you speak to him?
Well, there really wasn't much of an opportunity. You know, we chit chatted for maybe 60 seconds. You know, because it had the evening was packed. First of all, I don't know. There was definitely more than 1,000 people present. There was definitely more than 1,000 chairs set up, and every chair was taken. It was a curious type of headline. I mean, the event was billed not as a debate about anti-Semitism. I don't have it in front of me. Of course, I'm not allowed to look at any of my things here, according to the laws laid down by you for some reason. So I have to remember everything, which is a good memory exercise now that you come to think of it.
Yeah,
but
we're keeping you young.
But no, actually, your children and your siblings' children keep me young. You guys made me old. If you don't want to go off on too much of a tangent about that, but where was I? Okay, now we're talking about my memory. Oh, it was billed as a discussion around anti-Semitism. And I just noticed that last night because I got the flyer and an email, and I saw it in one of the newspapers here. So I would think that it would be billed as a discussion about anti-Semitism. Actually, it said discussion and debate about around anti-Semitism. So I said to Ben last night, Mr. Shapiro, and of course, I reminded him that Rabbi Goldberg introduced me to him as the editor of the Five-Town Jewish Times. And he didn't say, "What's that?" And I also, Ema reminded him of the fact that he did a podcast with you, and he seemed to have recalled that as well. He's a very straightforward guy. He lives right there, a few minutes away from the Boca Raton Shul. And I asked him, I said, what is this? What does it mean around a discussion and debate around anti-Semitism? And he said basically that him and the other guy on the panel, Mr. Rosenberg, Yair Rosenberg from the Atlantic magazine, which is an extreme liberal type of magazine, they pretty much both agree that anti-Semitism is a problem. So It's not a debate where one person is going to be against anti-Semitism and the other person is going to be for anti-Semitism. That'd be ridiculous. I don't know if you can find people like that actually that can sit in one place for 2 hours. Anyway,
I'm sure you could. I'm sure you could. Anyways, we're really enjoying hearing the grass being cut in front of you right
well,
now.
that's a sound. That's a sound. First of all, it's over in the other community, and that's the sounds of nature. It's no
Yes,
different than the bus honking the horns out at the double parked cars on Central Avenue outside your window.
it is beautiful.
It'll stop. It's gonna
Okay, so
stop
let's
soon.
get.
It'll stop soon. The sounds of
It's
nature.
only getting
It's the,
it's only getting louder, to be
it's the sounds
honest.
of nature. You know, you have very sensitive hearing, and it's a nice sound. What if it was What if it was thundering? I have to go inside because it's thundering. That's the sounds of nature. Okay, it's stopped now. Okay. Hope.
Anyways, so something that is getting a lot of airtime now because of the lack of airtime it's been getting is about the Ohio train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio. A train that was carrying
Toxic.
a train that was carrying toxic chemicals
I was
derailed.
shaking my head,
A-
Nafi, because on the news nobody pronounces it as East Palestine. It is East Palestine. They don't say it like that.
what do they
I don't
say?
know. I was watching Fox News. I was watching CBS last night. They say East Palestine. Uh,
East
they,
Palestine?
they don't they don't
I,
recognize the word. It's something very curious.
I don't know. It's spelled as Palestine.
Obviously, it's
I I saw a joke on Twitter that someone wrote that I'm sure they're blaming Israel for the train
yeah,
derailment in East Palestine. Anyways, um, a huge fire ignited
right.
and it covered the entire town of East Palestine in smoke. So here, this article says, fearful of major explosion, the authorities carved out an evacuation zone and carried out a controlled release of toxic fumes to neutralize burning cargo inside some of the train cars. The residents feared for their health as concerns have mounted about the effect the derailment and the fire could have on the environment and the transportation network. So this happened on February 3rd.
Right.
Today is February 15th.
Right.
And for many listeners, this might be the first time you're hearing about this. This East Palestine, Ohio, has around 4,700 people living there. It's near Pittsburgh, 50 miles northwest of Pittsburgh, and I heard that there's a big Amish community
Uh-huh.
that lives
Yeah.
there, and this is a big disaster. This is a big disaster because I think it's affecting people's health.
Well,
Um,
yeah, I agree with you.
yeah,
I agree with you. I saw some people on Tucker Carlson last night, a man and a woman who lived there, who said that the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, which is an arm of the government, the federal government, um, excuse me for a second, told the people that from the community they can go back to their homes on Friday. Meantime, this guy in the news was
right.
saying his dog is sick. The fish in the water have all died. He was breaking out in a rash on his face, and this is all since they came back on Friday.
Yeah,
And you know we have a transportation secretary. It all started with a train derailment, as you pointed out. You have Pete Buttigieg, who is the transportation secretary in the Biden administration. He was on the news all weekend long, and he was talking about the fact that there's too many white people in construction in black communities. That's what he was talking about. And you could look that up on YouTube or on Google. You see what's on Pete Buttigieg's mind when people are being poisoned. And just because it's in East Palestine, Ohio, or near Pittsburgh, it doesn't mean it stops there. It's going to wafт through the air conceivably for hundreds of miles and do all kinds of
yeah.
damage.
100%. So, the Daily Wire writes that legacy media networks ABC, CBS, NBC have spent less than 30 combined minutes covering the Norfolk Southern train derailment that has throttled East Palestine, Ohio, and threatened the health of millions living in Ohio River Basin. That is 30 minutes
You know
combined.
why?
That they're hiding something.
I'll tell you why. You know why? I heard someone say because that area mostly voted Republican in the last election.
Oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds facetious. It sounds cynical, and it is facetious and it is cynical, but it's also
So,
true.
you know what? It says in this article here that the organization also noted that the Columbiana County, Ohio, is more than 93% white and largely conservative. Some 72% of the residents cast their ballot for President Trump in
There you
2020.
go. There you go.
There you
There you
go.
go.
Abba has a
You
scoop.
solved the mystery, Nachi. You solved another case. You're like a sleuth.
I don't get it.
Listen,
I don't
if you
understand.
know who Pete Buttigieg is and who's running agencies like the EPA, and who runs Joe Biden, then you know that if it's Susan Rice or Barack Obama that's running the White House today, because it's certainly not Joe Biden, then you know that they don't care that much about those people. They don't have much.
Why was this train carrying such toxic chemicals?
That I don't know. But the guy that was on the news last night, I forgot his name, but he was saying that he used to work in transportation, and he's a farmer now. But he was saying that all these things that go on these trains that get transported around the country for whatever reason, there's all a record that has to be recorded somewhere, and the government knows absolutely everything that is on there, and all the potential damage it could create as a result of this derailment and explosions. But they're making it believe like nothing happened, telling people to go back to their homes. It's really a disaster. It's a tragedy for people. It's going to disrupt lives and it's going to hurt people, not just this week and next week, but conceivably children and others for many, many years to come. People,
It's
Avi,
disastrous.
people,
Yeah.
people still coming. People are still getting sick from having spent time down at the World Trade Center on 9/11. That's
Yeah.
22, almost 22 years ago, that they breathed in and ingested some kind of chemicals that the fuel from the airplanes and the collapse of the buildings and so on and so forth. People are still getting ill today. You don't know what kind of impact this is going to have for years to come. So
And it's completely getting buried. I don't get it. I don't understand. Like, even if they're conservative, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Anyways, another story. And first of all, I'm glad we're bringing it up here. I love the Amish people. I once went to Pennsylvania
yeah,
for a little bit.
yeah, yeah,
The Amish people are really, really cool. I
right,
think they're living right.
right,
I think besides for their Christian views, obviously, I think it's pretty cool. This is a shocking story, and this came out just a couple of days ago about a December 18th United Airlines flight from Hawaii to San Francisco.
right,
Shortly after it took up, the plane dropped
right,
1,400 feet,
right,
and it was within 700 feet of the ocean. It almost crashed.
right, right. I
Um,
saw that.
a passenger said that we were all looking at each other, looking out the window, grabbing onto the seat, praying, and people were screaming. And then it, the flight corrected itself, and then it, went on to its trip, and they landed in San Francisco. The pilots filed the appropriate safety report, and United closely coordinated with the FAA and the ALPA
Uh-huh.
an investigation that ultimately resulted in the pilots receiving additional training.
Right.
So I don't know what that means exactly, if the pilots did something wrong. But again, it's February 15th. This happened December 18th, and this story has been broken this week.
Well,
What is going on here?
well, I don't know. I don't know how those people voted between Hawaii and San Francisco, but that's not the point. The point is, I also read there was very bad weather they took off in. It was very stormy weather, and they probably should not have taken
Abba, a
off.
plane is not supposed, even in the stormiest of weather, a plane doesn't drop 1,400 feet and come within 700 feet of
Well, you
crashing.
said
And
they just took off. They were only at 1,400 feet. When
no, I think they were
maybe
higher
no,
up. I
yeah,
think
maybe
they were
2,200 feet.
they yeah, they reached 2,200 feet and they plunged down to 775 feet.
Okay,
That doesn't
but
happen.
as you can see, there was nothing wrong with the plane. It had to do with the atmospheric conditions.
Or it had to do with the pilots, because the pilots had to receive more training after they landed. Doesn't that tell you something?
Well, maybe they have to go back to planes that have training wheels so that they could be more careful going forward.
What's I don't know. Something that is interesting. I was listening this morning on the way into the office was a podcast with, and I don't really know how to pronounce his last name, Matt Taibbi.
Yeah, you got it right, I think. Yeah,
Oh, I got it right. Woo.
yeah,
Anyways, so he was on a podcast discussing, his new job. Ultimately, Elon Musk bought Twitter for $44 billion.
right.
Ultimately to be a whistleblower of the U.S. government. And he was explaining how, like, he's sifting through 50,000 emails, and he's seeing, like, the most ridiculous stuff. Like, members of Twitter making a file called secret numbers, and it's numbers of all the executives and the FBI and top executives, and it's on a Word doc, and like nothing is secure. Everything was just very harplop,
Yeah.
and and it's just like in these
Yeah.
emails you have emails from Adam Schiff asking Twitter to censor this Twitter account and make sure that anyone who retweets that information is censored. Forget the Hunter Biden story, which Twitter completely shut down, but true information regarding COVID was completely censored by Twitter. And I think that it leads me to what I want to discuss now, which was featured on Fox the other night, which is Chat GPT and the woke bias that Chat GPT has. Anybody that's used the app, it's really great. It's convenient. It can write a whole essay for you. It can do a lot. So what was featured on this news network is if you write into Chat GPT, can you write me a poem about Donald Trump?
Mhm.
The response it gives you is that I have no I don't have any political views, so I can't give you a poem about Donald Trump. However, if you write, can you give me a poem about Joe Biden? It goes ahead and writes you a whole poem about Joe Biden. If you ask Chat GPT to describe what is a woman, it says that it cannot be specified what a woman is. These are woke ideologies.
Yeah.
So what you see in the media
Who owns
is
it?
controlled.
Who owns ChatGPT?
So I think Microsoft.
Uh-huh.
I think Microsoft owns ChatGPT, which is Bill
Right.
Gates.
Right. Right.
So what you see in the media, what you see in the news, look, huge train derailment, Ohio, 30 minutes combined in all major news networks, completely buried, right?
Absolutely.
You know, the Hunter Biden story at the time, completely buried. And now we're seeing through this Matt Taibbi stuff that, oh my gosh, Twitter has been kicking people off, censoring accounts. It's crazy. And the stuff that they've been censoring, we're finding out is true. There's an article right in front of me via Yeshiva World that the debate has been settled. Masks made no difference when it came to COVID.
Right.
A mega study found.
Right.
The CDC's shifting stance on face masks in the early months of COVID-19 was almost comical. It first claimed that the face covering weren't needed, then made a sudden about face and demanded everyone wear one, including kids as young as 2 years old.
Right.
A new scientific review published by Cochrane University
Yeah.
finds that the CDC was dead wrong. Led by 12 preeminent researchers from across the world, the study found that masks did little or perhaps even nothing to help curb transmission of the virus.
Wow.
So we're all basically pawns of media and big tech to believe things that we don't even know.
So let me make a couple of comments about that. First of all, a lot of people last night were wearing masks in the BRS in the Boca shul. You know, people are entitled to wear masks. I know people. I saw people on planes wearing masks 10 years ago. You know, people from places like China and Japan, Asians, they wear masks all the time, very commonly, because
Right.
the air is very polluted in those countries, and they just don't want to breathe it in, or they want to reduce the amount of stuff that they're breathing in that could, you know, hurt their health. That maybe they have asthma, maybe they have some kind of other bronchial type of illness, and they want to minimize the amount of toxins that they take in. So I was sitting on planes years ago with people that wore masks before it became the law that you had to do it. So I mean, one of the many subjects were brought up last night, according to between Ben Shapiro and Jan Rosenberg. One of them was about the media coverage, whether media coverage of whether it's Israel, that's biased coverage in the New York Times. If the New York Times criticizes Israel in a certain way as being an occupier and stealing land from the Palestinians, does that lead to terrorist attacks? Or they said the question was, does criticizing yeshivas in Williamsburg or Muncie, does that lead to anti-Semitic attacks in Williamsburg or Borough Park? That Streimel's getting knocked off people's heads, hats getting knocked off people's heads, or people just being chased and harassed, like happened. What was it? Friday night in the Five Towns.
Yeah.
Some guys were walking home from a Shalom Zacher or going to a Shalom Zacher, and got stopped by some hoodlums, some thugs, and chased. And one guy was beaten up. And this is the story. Media has a big responsibility. It's very dangerous, like what you were just talking about, when media takes a side. The media was created. I think it always, since the inception of time, is there to inform the people, not to tell the people how they think they should think. But this business uh, of keeping information away from people because you want them to think a certain way according to what you believe, it has left to not only to dangerous situations, not only led to people's deaths, but has made the media uh, very extremely corrupt, and things are getting worse. Now, of course, every media outlet, whether it's Daily Thread or Meaningful People, or the New York Times or the Five Towns Jewish Times, you can't have you can't have 100% objectivity because every entity, if it's not run by God Himself, or it's not run by some mechanical programming in the computer, is going to have some kind of a bias. Okay.
Right.
Um, you know, you'll cover certain things and interview certain people on Meaningful People. You're not good because of the way you think and because the way what you want when you want to inspire your audience. For example, with Meaningful Minute, there's certain things that you're going to accept and certain things you're going to reject. So that's not dangerous, but it's a choice you're making, and it has a little bit of
Right.
bias in it, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, anything that any of us put out there has some sort of agenda and bias, I'd say. And I don't think an agenda is a bad thing as long as that agenda is not, manipulative,
Well, who
or you're
determines?
not, doing.
And see, anyone who disagrees with you will think it's manipulative. Okay?
I just think you need to be forthright, though. You have to really be forthright for, people know that if they're going to listen to Daily Thread, we're really not going to have, liberal perspectives and stuff like that. Where people tune into the Daily Wire, like they know that they know what they're getting. They're getting Ben Shapiro. You're getting Matt Walsh. Um, I mean, I think that where you run into an issue is when with information is withheld to give a certain narrative. So example like with Twitter censoring accounts, or with Chat GPT completely just like, you know having a very, very specific agenda, a woke agenda. I think it's problematic. I think it's just like not honest. And every news media, every outlet, what you need is honesty. Honesty.
Okay,
That's
but
it.
honesty also is subject to interpretation. What's completely honest to one person may not be honest to another person. Somebody said to me last week or 2 weeks ago, someone said to me just casually on the street, we were chit chatting, and they said, you haven't had any women on the cover of the newspaper in about 6 weeks. I wasn't even aware of that. We were covering stories. I don't know what was on there for the last 6 weeks. I haven't memorized it, but people notice those types of things. So
Right.
even though it wasn't intentional, because we don't have that kind of ideology, or we're not mindful of we're trying to communicate certain messages to people. But it just struck me as an interesting observation. And look what people notice. Not the point I'm trying to make is by not having a picture of a woman in the news, or a news story that's featured on the front page that has women involved in it, they believe that I'm making some kind of a statement. So
Yeah.
it's almost like you're being held accountable for what you don't do as much as what you do.
Right. Listen, got to be cognizant of
and
it.
you're and you're and
Got to
you're in
be,
the you're in the
got to
same
be.
boat. You're aware of that. You're
Yeah.
aware of that. You know, you have some very brilliant young ladies, teachers, in seminaries and in different communities that sometimes you feature on Meaningful Minute, but the majority is men. Are you making some kind of a statement because of that? I
Absolutely
don't think
not.
so. But that's how people think, though. Anyway, there's all kinds of levels of bias, and in terms of the general what they call the mainstream media, obviously, and the way they've been interfacing with government, like the FBI, and with the news media and with social media. Obviously, there's something very nefarious at play here. But it's
Yeah.
being revealed now, Nafi. But what's going to happen about for denying people their First Amendment rights of free expression by having their accounts blocked? Somebody has to be accountable. Somebody in Congress who was involved in this can't just be called out on it. They have to be investigated. They have to be held liable. They have to be indicted and tried and forced to resign. Only then will you get changes. Just by saying this guy's not a good guy, that doesn't mean anything to them. They're used to being called all kinds of names when they serve in the Congress. And when they're accused of something, they deny it and they go on going on the next day doing what they usually do. I want to bring up one more story, an interesting story. Can I do that?
What is it?
It's a story that this morning, Wednesday, the Knesset passed a law that takes away Israeli citizenship of terrorists who are convicted of crimes and receive money from the Palestinian Authority as compensation when they're in prison. You know what that means? That means that terrorists who have a motivation for injuring and killing Jews because that's going to get them a monthly check from the Palestinian Authority without money coming from the United States and from the Europeans mostly, will now have their citizenship taken away, and they're in prison, but their families, according to the law, will be able to be deported from the country. And
Wait, so one second. So how about a terrorist who doesn't receive money? Why isn't his citizenship revoked?
well,
He's a terrorist.
first, it has to be broken down, of course, by the legal process. There's a legal process in Israel. Israel's a country
I
of
mean, why does
laws.
he have to receive money in order to be his citizenship be revoked? Why can't his citizenship be revoked if he commits a terrorist
I
attack?
don't know all the details of this law. It just passed into law today. It still has to be implemented, but it's a giant step forward. This is what I'm talking about. There has to be consequences for actions. You can't just say so and so's a bad guy and then find out what they're serving for lunch later. So and so's a bad guy. What happens next? What happens next in the process? And in this particular case, for the first time, this has been tolerated by Israeli governments for decades. A guy runs his car and kills a couple of kids, Nebuch, on the roads. Okay, he was shot and killed by a police officer, which was right, obviously. But if a guy survives, if the attacker survives and he gets arrested and he goes on trial and he gets in prison, let's say he'll be in prison for the next 20 years or 25 years. Meantime, his family who live somewhere in, I don't know where, one of the Jenin or Ramallah, wherever they live, they're going to get paid because the
Yeah.
Palestinian position is that this person who's in jail for the crime is a hero, and they're going to get compensated. They're going to get a reward. It's tantamount to being a reward for what he did. Now those people, besides up until now what they did last week in terms of the guy who ran over those kids last week, they sealed the house, and now they're going to demolish the house, and you know, people have to tell their kids, there's a family structure also in the Arab world. There's such thing as a family structure. There's such a thing as a mother and a father and children. And the fathers have to tell their children, you better not get involved in anything like that. Because this family is not only going to be homeless, we're going to be broke. We're going to be poor. We're going to be in poverty. We're going to be living on the street. That's the type of consequences that you need. And finally, after all these years of tolerating these kinds of punishments that victimize innocent Israelis, finally we have a law moving forward. And by the way, it passed in the Knesset 94-10. Okay, it
Wow.
wasn't along partisan lines. That's a huge consensus in the Knesset. Oh, now I can finally see you. The sun went down. The sun went behind the clouds for a minute. Boy, I didn't even know you was. I didn't know
Okay.
you was there. I couldn't see you till now.
Hi. Good morning. Anyways, that's our episode for today, The Daily Thread. If you want to reach us, you can email us at thedailythread at meaningfulminute.org, or you can go ahead and send us a message on WhatsApp. The link is in the description in the show notes.
Right.
We hope you have an amazing day.
Yes. Thanks very much, Naki. See you later. Be well.